Hello everybody. This screencast is to give you an overview of what is required for everyone at this time of the year with the effectiveness project. We are planning to give everything to you in small doses this year, just as we did last year, so that it is not overwhelming for you. And you might have questions, which are absolutely expected. Just continue to ask those questions and know that we will not expect you to do any step of this throughout the year without us giving you the refreshers and training and the reminders that you will need to do so. When you log into My Learning Plan, you should see all of the forms that you will have to submit throughout the year. In this example, you can see that this is a teacher who is on their summative year, or what DPI is now calling the summer year, because you can see that this teacher has a pre-observation conference record form, which that is obviously what happens before a formal observation. And those formal observations only happen during your summative or your summary year for evaluations. At this time of the year, for all teachers and specialists, the two components that you will need to be working on are the Learner Survey Growth Plan and the Professional Goal Setting Plan. Both of these forms are due by October 15th. If you find yourself having a problem with this deadline for either component, please contact your building principal. We are human and understand that if this date might be a challenge for some of you, we recognize that it likely will be for us to be reviewing all of them by October 15th. Please don't start freaking out about two things being due by October 15th, because the good news for all of you who were here last year and went through this process is that a lot of this is very similar to what we did last year, especially with the student surveys. You can find information about the student surveys on page 10 of the teacher guidebooks. You're simply just going to need to conduct this survey with your students, use their feedback to reflect on your practice, and then you are going to go into My Learning Plan and you're going to open up the Learner Survey Growth Plan and complete the information that is necessary. You're going to use the guiding questions in this form as you reflect. When you complete this process, you will simply just submit at the bottom. Now, when you submit this, it does notify your evaluator that you have completed it. If you are working on this form and you're not finished and you need to come back to it later, make sure that you click Save. This is not like Google Docs where it saves every 3 seconds. You have to actually click the Save button. If you click Save, it doesn't notify your evaluator that you have done any work. We won't know that there's anything there. In fact, we won't even see it. So one common problem that we had last year is people clicking Save and thinking that they were finished, but you have to click on Submit when you are finished. This button here, just as a reminder, the Save and Notify, that would be a button that you would only push if you want to save it and you know, maybe you have a question, you want to ask for some feedback on something before you finally submit it. I'm going to look back at my forms here at the beginning. Last year, all teachers had a self-assessment and an SLO to complete. These were two separate forms that are now combined into one, which is in the Professional Goal Setting Plan. The Professional Goal Setting Plan has 3 steps that are outlined here for you in the directions. I'll let you read those on your own. But they're the SLO process, completing the self-assessment of professional practice, and the professional practice goal. Now, if you were to scroll down, this might look overwhelming, but I'm going to take this step by step with you. And I'm just going to let you know that most of it is really identical to last year's process. What changes in the end is the SLO rubric, which is focusing more on the process for you, which I think is a great thing for teachers. Kind of takes that pressure off. So let's take a look at this. For many of you who are waiting on beginning of the year data to form your SLO, it might be easier for you to skip step 1 right now and just go down to step 2. So we're going to do that first. We're going to look at step 2, which is a self-assessment of professional practice. And those of you who were here last year, you did this already. All you simply need to do is just reflect on yourself as a professional in each standard. You're going to see that there are a lot of boxes here. You do not need to be filling out all of these boxes. As you look at one standard, you will simply, right here in the top part of each standard, if you click this little triangle, you're going to be able to see what the rubric is for that standard, to see what an effective educator is doing for professional knowledge. And remember, this is where we want teachers to be. The effectiveness is the goal. If you want to move up into distinguished, you're going to look at what parts there would make an educator distinguished. So this is great to look at the rubric as you're reflecting on yourself in each of the standards. Now really, the only necessary part that we would like you to do for each standard is in the very first part of the standard here to enter a reflection. And this is where you would type 2 to 3 sentences on reflecting on yourself on that standard. Please do not write an essay. You don't even have to write a full paragraph, just a few sentences. Remember that this isn't meant to be tedious work. This should be meaningful reflection for you as a professional. So within each standard, again, you can look at the rubric, and then you're going to enter a reflection for each standard. Now, as you're looking through this standard, you might find it helpful to look at what these indicators are, and you might identify one of these that you might want to enter a reflection just for that indicator. Again, we are not looking for people to fill out a box for each of these indicators. We are going to be looking for it at the top for this standard. After you go through this for each standard, so you're going to do this for all 6 of the standards, and we would like you to identify which standard do you feel is a strength for you and which one is an area that you identify for growth. True professionals are constantly learning and growing. The area that you identify for growth may not necessarily be a weakness, but it's your personal area for growth as a professional. Now, how you'll do that is you're going to enter in here again, you're going to be typing your reflection, but you could, if you feel that instructional delivery is out of the 6 standards your area of strength, all you do is click on that box and it highlights that as a strength. Maybe you feel that assessment is an area for growth for you. That's something that you're working on. You can just simply click on that to highlight that it's an area for growth. And that is going to be in along to what you're writing in your reflection here. And maybe you specifically decide that you're working on one specific part of assessment. Maybe you're wanting to collect and maintain sufficient assessment data to support accurate reporting of your student progress, and that's really what you're working on. You could go ahead and use that as well. So again, we're looking for a reflection of just a few sentences in each standard, and then identify one standard for growth and one standard for strength. Again, I showed you this part, which is actually step 2 of this form, the self-assessment, because that's something you all could start right now. You don't need your beginning of the year data to be able to do this. So now we're going to go back and look at part 1, which is the SLO process. Again, the SLO process looks very similar to last year. I'm actually going to step out of this form for a moment. And I'd like to show you this helpful visual, which really sets out what the SLO process is, and this can be found in your guidebook as well. And this really lays out for the year what you're going to be able to be doing. You're establishing your SLO goal as you assess your students and look at their data. You're gathering evidence, planning for instruction. You're going to be having a mid-cycle review. You're making any necessary changes so that you're meeting your students' needs. You're going to continue to gather evidence, and then at the end of the year, or for you, some of you high school folks, the end of the semester, you're evaluating the results and you're going to be scoring your SLO. I think you'll also find that page 15 of the guidebook has a very helpful SLO process guide that lists these SLO quality indicators as a guide for you as you're developing your SLO. All of that detailed information can be found in the guidebooks, but as you're looking at the form here in the teacher professional goal setting form, it really walks you through what work you need to be writing in each section of the SLO form. Now, one piece that is a little bit different for us this year is that the guidelines from DPI state that teachers in year 1 and 2 of a 3-year evaluation cycle can work collaboratively with their evaluator or a peer and document it in my learning plan. You're going to see throughout the year that teachers in year 1 and 2 can also completely self-score this at the end of the year. For new educators and those in the summative or the summary year, the evaluator must also meet and discuss the SLO goal with you. The SLO goal will be reviewed mid-year or mid-semester for some of you high school educators. But that's in another form, so I'm not even going to show you that right now. At the end of the SLO interval, or for the year for most of us, educators that are in years 1 or 2, as I said, are going to be able to self-score the SLO. And for new teachers and those in the summative year or the 3rd year of the evaluation cycle, the evaluator draws upon the SLO process quality indicators to inform the determination of a holistic score using the SLO rubric, scoring rubric. This year, we're just looking at what is in your SLO this year. Last year's practice doesn't really count. But for those of you who are going to be in your summative or summary year next year, we will also be looking back at this year's SLO data. So it is important that you're all putting thoughtful process into this, and that even though you are self-scoring, we will be referring back to it next year. Now, a great teacher would never give their students a major assignment and not let them know how it would be scored or what the expectations are. So you can find the SLO scoring rubric on page 16 of the guidebook, or page 17 for the specialist. This rubric, I'm sure, will be something that you're going to want to be looking at as you are writing your SLO goal. And you're going to see this year that it doesn't just state whether you've exceeded your goal or met your goal. It includes the process of what you're doing as you're writing your SLO goal, which I find to be very important, because you want to set a high goal that you might not meet, but you're working very hard and you're making changes and trying to meet all of your students' needs. And that process is included in the rubric this year. All right, now there's one more step in this form, and that is part 3, which is the professional practice goal statement. It is just one little box at the bottom of this form. The professional practice goal is focused on the educator's practice. This goal is not scored, but it serves to align your SLO to the professional practice. As a building principal, I enjoy knowing what each staff member's professional practice goal is, so that as I'm in classrooms, I can try to focus on that goal as an area to give feedback to a teacher, or possibly share any resources that I might find that could help support that teacher in that area. Please note, it is highly recommended that you write a PPG or a professional practice goal that supports your SLO. However, it is not required to write one. If you would like to write a goal that involves practices that you want to improve on, but are not necessarily related to the SLO. Okay, that's it for now. So what's next? The timeline can be found on page 21 of the guidebook. So you can see, for those of you who are in your summative or summary year, by October 30th, we need to have a pre-conference with you and do your first formal observation. And on December 17th, we are going to be having another refresher training on the SLO mid-year review and the second surveys. And we'll do that in the same format that has the screencast available to you. Now, I know this was a lot of information, so if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask your building principal or myself. We're here to help you through this process.